Helen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here. We're here today to talk about, I think for a lot of small business owners, the legalities can be a really confusing part of having your own small business. So we're here today. I know you were, in a previous life, a practicing lawyer.
I was indeed.
And now you've moved on and you have a very successful business yourself and you work from home with your two small children, or sometimes you do get out of the house to do a bit of work too. But we're here today to talk about copyright law and sort of explore sort of the legalities of copyright. So we might start off by, if you tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Helen Duckham. I started the largest distribution of designer gumboots in Australia, and that was about 7 years ago. And you know, that wasn't a very hard thing to do because when I started, nobody else was importing gumboots. So from the outstart, I was the largest distributor, and to this day, 7 years later, I still am.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you left your law career to then move into gumboots.
I did indeed. I started a long career in law. The longest part of my career in law was studying, in fact. But I really enjoyed my time studying law, and then I moved on and started to practice. But I did find that my time was being constrained in ways that I didn't find acceptable, and I was looking forward to starting a family, and I couldn't see how my legal career and my family were going to find a level of congruence that was going to make me happy and enable me to be with my babies as much as I wanted to be. I breastfed my babies for a long time, and I would have hated not to have had the option to do that because my employer perhaps may have suggested that my working time wouldn't enable me to do that.
Yeah,
so I really wanted to find a career that would enable me to truly control my time.
And I imagine having a law background gives you a really solid foundation in business.
Well, it does. It gives me a great deal of confidence. I don't know that you need to go through a double degree in law and do honours to get to the point where I am. In fact, I think, it's probably a little bit overdone. And a course in entrepreneurship may have been more appropriate. But nonetheless, I've drawn what I could from studying law.
And so you're here today to talk specifically about copyright law. You were not a copyright lawyer, but certainly, you know, obviously being a lawyer, you have a greater level of understanding than lots of us. So we're going to talk about what exactly is copyright.
Sure, let's talk about copyright law, and I'm really glad you asked me to come in to talk about it because it's given me the opportunity to read up more about this area of law. It's such an important area of law for you and I and everybody else who are running their own business, because what the law does is it protects any tangible form that somebody creates. So whether it be written or artistic, so in the form of cake, for instance, as soon as a tangible product is produced and recorded through artistic skill and endeavour, and as long as that production is original, that product is protected by Australian copyright law, and that's an instant protection. There is nothing you need to do.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. When you say protected by Australian copyright law, with the way sort of media and the internet is so global, does that give you any protection overseas with copyright?
Australia has signed an agreement with the US and other countries, mainly other common law countries, regarding copyright law, and generally the laws are the same, but there may be some differences between countries. But generally you'll find it's the same, but there may be crossovers, so it's always important to check depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how long does copyright last for? So you said that you don't have to do anything. Your work is instantly covered by copyright once you create it. Does that copyright last indefinitely?
It doesn't last indefinitely. It lasts for a specific period of time. This time keeps increasing. As soon as Mickey Mouse got involved, he started increasing the laws. The time to which copyright law could cover the use of a particular icon or any copyrightable item. So Mickey Mouse, for instance, will go out of copyright in 2019. He's only been in copyright until 2019 because there has been a number of extensions to the copyright law in America, and that generally will influence us here in Australia. So to answer your question, the length of time for copyright is now 70 years plus the life of the author, or 70 years plus the published date of the item.
Okay. So explain it a little bit further. So if we're using cake as the example, so if you've created, for example, a standard 3-tier white cake, and you've put your own embellishments on it, but there's a lot of 3-tier white cakes out there in the market. Do you own copyright to that, given that it's simply a derivative of something that's already out there?
You bring up a really good point. In our culture, we're informed by symbols and objects and ideas that are recurrent, and a 3-tier white cake probably fits within that with flowers on it. Yeah. Unless it was something that was quite unique and novel, original, produced through artistic endeavour and independent skill. And generally that's something that a reasonable person can detect fairly easily. As a cake decorator, I'm sure you would see a cake that didn't fit an ordinary idea of a generic cake, and if it didn't fit that generic form, then it can be copyrighted. But whether or not you can protect that design is another issue. So first and foremost, you must take a photo of it. That creates a tangible form.
Okay, so you bring up there taking photos, and I often wonder, people are talking about copyright so much because they're putting their photos on Instagram and Facebook, and, does that have any impact? If we ourselves have taken a photo and put it out there in the public domain, are we leaving ourselves open to be copied, and does copyright still protect us then? Well,
you're definitely leaving yourself open to be copied, absolutely. I think a lot of people are quite aware that the internet is a rife ground for copying.
Yeah.
I heard a statistic which said that 1 in 4 internet users are copying information from the internet. So if you put your information on the internet, there's a definite chance that you will be copied. How do you protect that? Well, then you have to go through another level of legal endeavour by contacting the people infringing you and so forth. So if you're concerned about your product being copied, I would say don't put it on the internet.
Okay, and what would you do, what would you suggest if someone is copying your work? So there are circumstances out there where people, will copy someone's style quite specifically and then market it as their own. What would you do in that instance?
Well, I would initially contact this person with a formal letter pursuant to the Copyright Act 1968, outlining that there has been a breach of copyright law and that breach is in breach of your own artistic endeavour, and pursue the matter from there.
Okay, so we're talking about protecting your own work. Now, where do we stand if we are asked by a client to create something that is under copyright? Say, for example, a Mickey Mouse cake, or we've got a Mickey Mouse shaped tin and we want to bake a cake in that and then on-sell it. Where do we stand there?
Well, I love that question because I know the answer to it. Okay, so let's say you have a Mickey Mouse tin. The first thing you must consider is, when you buy it, what is the purpose for use of this Mickey Mouse tin? If Disney didn't expect you to reproduce Mickey Mouse, why would they sell a tin? So, well, you've bought this tin. Where have you bought it? Is it in a commercial environment? Is there anything specific on the packaging that suggests that you shouldn't use it for commercial purposes? And generally there will be. And if there's not, if it's to be used for domestic purposes, then yes, indeed, you can make a Mickey Mouse cake from the tin for domestic use. But whether or not you're going to take it to the next level and transcend to commercial use, that's when you're now stepping into an infringement zone. That's something you shouldn't do, because you're procuring a benefit that Disney himself would have procured with the imagery that he's created, having made Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, sure, understand. So are there any characters we can use on cakes, Helen?
Well, yes, you can. You can indeed use Mickey Mouse as long as you've purchased a licensed figurine or object produced by Disney for that purpose. And you can certainly decorate your cake with motifs that are suggestive of Mickey Mouse, such as the Pantone colour red, or red and black combined with what else does Mickey Mouse wear? A big belt, or something. That's
Minnie Mouse has some spots, I think.
Yeah, polka dots are not copyrighted. That probably falls within the generic
use.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure polka dots are absolutely fine. So you could definitely ladle your cake with polka dots and then pop a little figurine on there.
Okay, interesting. So now, what are the implications if we actually do infringe copyright? What can happen to us?
Okay, so if you infringe copyright, well, you could be up for a lot of money. That's if you ever get caught. The chances of being detected, I'm not quite sure what they are, but you always run the risk of being detected. So the chances are being fined. The chances of loss are to pay back the money that you earned as a result of using the copyrighted material, and there may be other issues involved.
So not really worth running the risk.
No, probably not. Unless you can persuade your customers never to take a photo of it, and you were to never take a photo, but no, I wouldn't recommend it at all.
Okay, so now are there any exemptions to copyright?
Yeah, there are a number of exemptions, which is sort of fun. The first exemption is if copyright has indeed expired, and there is a lot of product out there, and I think this is a great business opportunity for anybody who wanted to pull this information together. There is a lot of product that has expired. Copyright no longer exists, and that product exists if it was created before the 1st of January 1955. So you may have heard of Miles Franklin. All of her work is no longer protected by copyright. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland, all of his work is no longer protected by copyright.
So we can make Alice in Wonderland cakes freely.
Could indeed.
A good tip. That's quite a popular cake.
Yeah. But having said that, Disney did use and was inspired by the work of Lewis Carroll to create figures of Alice in Wonderland. You couldn't use those particular figures because they are an expression of Disney, but you could use a figure that you create yourself of Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, gosh, it's quite complicated, isn't it?
It is just a little.
So what often happens too online is that people actually steal photographs as well. So if a cake designer has taken a photograph of their cake, sometimes they see that pop up in someone else's newsfeed or perhaps on their website being promoted as another decorator's work. What would we do in that circumstance?
Well, that's highly illegal behaviour. If you're passing off your work as though it was somebody else's, then you're really taking an economic gain that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the creator of that original cake. What you could do again is send a letter under the Copyright Act asking them to immediately remove the cake and from there seek legal advice.
Okay. And so a lot of people try and watermark their photos. Is this a good thing to be doing?
Sure. If the photo's original, it's of original work, I would highly recommend that you watermark photos because this would hopefully deter people from copying your photograph and passing it off as their own.
Okay. So if we were to, for example, send a letter to someone and they didn't respond, what's the next course of action then?
Well, at this point, I would suggest going to consult with a lawyer because at that point, they would then proceed to have this individual appear at court to answer the issues which are pertinent, the illegal activities. So if they have not at any point responded to the letter or they have not removed the offending articles, then a further legal activity would take place and that would be court action.
Okay. And I'm interested in your opinion, which is probably a bit more of a personal opinion versus a legal opinion, as to how you would personally approach that situation from making a decision about whether or not that was worth doing. So, you know, is the gain or the amount of energy you would put into that, because obviously you would know how long that process is and the amount of energy expended when you actually pursue a legal case like that.
Well, usually a stern letter, an official stern letter, outlining the provisions of the Act and the actual offence under the Act by the individual will generally deter the person from carrying on with the behaviour. And in fact, I have had copyright infringements of my product, and I have indeed sent a letter to that effect, and as soon as the offending people were notified of the behaviour, they immediately stopped it. And I think generally people, they don't want to get in trouble. If they get caught, they do it thinking they're not going to get caught, and if they do get caught, they usually take a step back. But let's say, if it were me, and I had somebody who was pursuing and continuing to show my work as though it was their own, what would I do? Well, first I would be, I think I would feel a great compliment that they were doing that and that I was getting a great deal of exposure. And depending on how much that product was making me, I don't know, I might just let it go. If I thought I could get recompense from it, I might continue. But it really depends on how much profit they're deriving from my product. And if they're not deriving profit, then I can't really claim damages that are high enough to compensate for the effort it might take in pursuing copyright action. So it's a preventative measure, I think, but it's really a law that works for Mickey Mouse and his friends. I think it's the big businesses that really are able to use the breadth of copyright law, as opposed to us other individuals.
Without a legal department.
Without a legal department and a great resource of finance to fund it.
Absolutely. I think I know my finance can be better spent elsewhere than with lawyers, no offence. Other places to channel that money. Thank you so much. I really feel that has really covered, it's really explained a lot of things about copyright for me and given me a little bit more clarity around the issues there. So thank you for that.
That's my
Is there
pleasure.
anything else that we haven't covered in copyright law that you'd like to add?
I think we've pretty much covered the most important parts of copyright law. Just remember, if it's your work, it's protected as soon as it's produced and as soon as you formed it in a tangible form. And if it's somebody else's work, just try not to copy it.
Good advice. Now, I am interested to talk to you too, Helen, because I met you probably, I think maybe 5 years ago, and I was working a corporate job, but you were working in your own business. And over the years, you've inspired me personally, watching you grow your business and watching that sort of develop over the years and sort of the different directions it's taken. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts about how you've done that successfully, how, you've fitted in juggling being a mum, you've had another child in that time, and how you've, really brought all that together.
Wow.
Big question, huh?
I
think there's about 7 questions in there.
Yeah, big question. I've got a long time to talk, so if you've got time, I can tell you all about it. Look, I absolutely love what I do. I feel like I am so completely blessed, and I'm so glad I was able to fight through my personal fears and break through to this other side, which I only dreamed of. But I got there, and I was on a side where all it was dreams and fear, and a real desperate need to talk to people to help me get over that fear and find a way through to being self-funded and proficient at what I do.
So tell me, Helen, when you were in that place of really, so desperate and really wanting that next phase of your life, how did you overcome that fear that was inside you?
Well, first I felt the fear. And I recognised what it was. And when I felt it and I recognised it, then I really had to have a pretty stern talk to myself and encourage myself to make the most of this energy. What was I going to do? Was I going to let the fear take me back to where I was, which wasn't such a bad place. It was a place I could live in, going to work, 9 to 5, half an hour lunch, coffee at the desk, sitting down for a long time? Or could I move on and take control of my life? So really it was about priorities for me and what I really needed. So constant self-negotiation, constant motivational thoughts, constantly telling myself that I can do it, but moreover, work. And if I didn't know something, learn it. If I didn't know something, do a course on it, or just pick up a book, just get past the point where I was able to learn it and then move on to the next level.
I think that requires a lot of self-discipline too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I also want to ask you, through doing all of that, and I know your business has grown significantly since I first met you, you've gone into different areas. How have you juggled all that with having kids? Because I think that's something so many, women, they want to have their own businesses, but when they've got particularly young children, and I know yours are quite young, how do you do it?
Well, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I started my business 7 years ago. So while I was in the complete thick of my business, and when my business was on an incredible increase upward, I was breastfeeding little baby. How do I do it? Well, I'm so lucky I've got a beautiful partner, lifetime partner, who's incredibly helpful. But money really helps. If you've got money to pay staff to do things, you can coordinate your life. If you can pay someone to come and clean your house 3 times a week. I even had people chopping up vegetables.
So I guess taking out of that, the key things are support and organisation. I mean, if it's not your partner, if you've got your mum, or I know, I've had challenges sort of during the time I was running my business that I didn't have the support network there, and things fall apart so quickly when you don't have that.
Well, neither did I. I didn't really have a great support network myself. So it's very important when you're choosing a business that you choose something that is not too time consuming, if you can. If you can't, just do whatever you can to get moving. But also, I spent a lot of my life up at 2 o'clock in the morning sending emails to people, and people would often comment on the time that I chose to work. That was the quietest time for me. So I lived in a rhythm that wasn't ordinary, but it suited me, and it suited my children, and it suited what we were doing.
So what would be your advice to women? Because I know we will have a lot of women watching this that are desperate to work for themselves and change that life. And I know, both for you and I, that the change in our lives from, working for someone else to working for ourselves is quite dramatic. What would be your advice to get that life that you want?
My advice is start now and get moving. Don't let yourself stay where you are if you don't want to be there. Lose the victim, move on, learn, try hard, motivate yourself, and just go, go, go.
I think that's awesome advice, and that's exactly why you've inspired me over these past 5 years, seeing you go out there. And I don't think I know anyone who just goes out and goes as hard as you do. So for me, that's really inspiring, and I think for our viewers it will be as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and see you. So any final words?
Business is great. There's so much opportunity out there. Get it where you can. China's not far away. Internet's an amazing resource for women. I would really like to just track the power of women in conjunction with the internet to see how far we've gone and how much we have now as a result of having this unlimited way of communicating at any time. So I think the time is now for women.
It's an amazing point you bring up there, because women are no longer constrained by being in the home with their children. 40 years ago, if you weren't actually going out to work, it was very hard to really generate a lot of income unless you were able to bring your work into the home. But now it's there. It's on the computer. You just
Exactly.
And you can have your kids around you.
The lines are blurred. It's not the traditional lifestyle. There is no 9 to 5 anymore. And the market is alive and it's bubbling, and people are spending 24/7.
Yes. So just get out there,
Just
really.
get out there and do it. Just stake your claim. It's like, I often say to people, when America was first colonised, I have these images that you see on the TV of these families who've just come over from Ireland, and they want to get themselves a large plot of land, and they just have a stake with a flag, and they start running through the field. And then just stake their claim. Yes, this is me. I am now the largest distributor of gumboots in Australia. That's
awesome.
what I suggest people should do.
Wow, we now have members in over 40 countries, which blows me away. I mean, the possibilities are just were never there. And I heard a statistic the other day that there's 3 billion people coming online in the next 5 years. So if anyone's thinking that they've missed the boat,
no way.
Not at all,
Look, what you've done is amazing, Louise, because you've just captured a part of a market that was ready to be captured. People want to learn. They want your information. So why not give it to them?
It was just staking our claim. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure everyone's going to get so much value from this conversation. It's been fantastic.
Look forward to chatting again.
Thank you.